He's not your typical hero. He's broke, bruised, and neck deep in trouble, and he's about to take you on a wild ride through a city full of shadows, lies, and double crosses. When a tough ex-con hires a down-on-his-luck private detective to find a missing girl, things spiral fast. What starts as a simple job turns into a tangled mess of murder, stolen jewelry, and dangerous women who are as clever as they are deadly. This gritty detective story redefined film noir and made one thing clear: being a private eye might sound cool, but it can get you killed. Hello to all the classic people who are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors and let you know that there will be spoilers ahead. Today on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on film noir, Murder My Sweet 1944. Murder My Sweet is a fantastic film noir for many reasons, including Dick Powell's transition from Hoofer, the second best Phil Marlowe, only paled by Humphrey Bogart as that character, to the direction of Edward Dmytryk and the shooting techniques that I will discuss in the conclusion. After much cogitation and gnashing of teeth, I've moved Murder My Sweet 1944 to number 10 on my list of all film noirs, which includes over 1,100 film noirs. Murder My Sweet is not in TCM's Noir Alley host Eddie Muller's top 25 noirs, and for the love of me, I don't know why. Murder My Sweet has a pretty good 7.6 rating on IMDb.com, but it should be higher. On RottenTomatoes.com, this film has a much more appropriate 94% on the tomato meter and 87% audience approval. New York Times film critic A.H. Wheeler said in an April 29, 1945 article titled, "If at First, etc., this film is, quote, a very respectable piece of tough melodrama stemming from the Raymond Chandler novel, Farewell, My Lovely." The critics duly noted that latter fact, and some even commented on how passages from the film's dialogue have been lifted right out of the book. But the thing that escapes the critics' attention is that Farewell, My Lovely had served RKO previously as the basis of a Falcon's adventure. Not a very exciting adventure, made in 1942 under the title The Falcon Takes Over and starring George Sanders. In fact, in reviewing the picture, this newspaper noted, "For a man of Mr. Sanders' cool talent, The Falcon Takes Over is a distinct waste of time." RKO did much better with Dick Powell and Moviegoers 2 on its second stab at filming Mr. Chandler's story. All of the above would seem to bear out that old adage, if at first you don't succeed, unquote. Actors. Dick Powell took the lead as private detective Philip Marlowe. Powell was first covered in another great film noir, Cry Danger 1951. The amazingly talented Claire Trevor played the role of Helen Grayle. Trevor was first covered during the great film Key Largo 1948, and we can fight about whether that's a film noir or not later. She is always amazing, a true noir goddess. Ex-wrestler turned actor Mike Mazurki played the size-appropriate Joe Moose Malloy. Mazurki was first covered in a solid film noir, The Shanghai Gesture 1941. Esther Howard masterfully played the role of besotted Jessie Florian. Howard was first covered in another film noir, Born to Kill 1947, where she played virtually the same character. Otto Kruger played Jules Amthor. Kruger was first covered in the terrific classic horror film Dracula's Daughter 1936. Anne Shirley was in the role of Anne Grayle. But is she good or bad? Shirley was born in New York City in 1918.
I'm walking here!
When Shirley was still an infant, her father died. To make ends meet, her mother began working the 16-month-old baby as a model. Her mother took the next logical step and sought movie roles for her 4-year-old child. Her first film was The Hidden Woman in 1922. After Anne's second film, she and her mother moved to Hollywood. The mother-daughter team was able to find film work. Eventually, Shirley was working with some very popular stars in films like Mother Knows Best 1928, Lilium 1930, Rich Man's Folly 1931, and So Big 1932. In her early teens, Shirley earned even more prominent roles in films such as Rasputin and the Empress 1932 and The Life of Jimmy Dolan 1933. Finally, she won the role of Anne in Anne of Green Gables 1934. Shirley was a big teen star through the late 30s and early 40s. Her films during this period include Steamboat Round the Bend, 1935, Endless, 1936, Meet the Missus, 1937, and Stella Dallas, 1937. For that last film, both she and co-star Barbara Stanwyck were nominated for Oscars. Neither woman won. Shirley was given a good film and then a stinker or two. This pattern was similar to what was done to Evelyn Keyes. It's got me wondering if it was a strategy to keep female stars from becoming too powerful. If I find a third instance, I will know it is true. Movies that represent this back and forth include Career, 1939, Vigil in the Night, 1940, Anne of Windy Poplars, 1940, The Devil and Daniel Webster, 1941, and West Point Widow, 1941. Shirley did a fantastic job on Murder My Sweet, 1944, before walking away from Hollywood. On the personal side, Shirley had 3 marriages and 2 are of note. The first was to actor John Payne. Her second husband was Adrian Scott, a communist and one of the Hollywood 10 who served time in prison. After divorcing this communist, she married a Republican next. Shirley never returned to acting, and following her third husband's death, she had problems with alcohol. She recovered, but never returned to Hollywood society. She died at the age of 75 in 1993. Story. Like most really good film noirs, this movie is told out of sequence, being told in flashbacks. It begins with Private Detective Phil Marlowe, Dick Powell, being interrogated by the Bay City Police. They have the lights on Marlowe, sweating him, but he's wearing patches over his eyes. Lieutenant Randall, Donald Douglas, comes into the room to question Marlowe about a couple of murders. Marlowe agrees to put everything on the record.
Want to make a statement? Boys tell me I did a couple of murders. Anything in it? I think you better let me have it. Bring in your book.
He begins his tale, and the scene fades back to his office. He was in the office sometime after dark and was using his black book to find a date. Marlowe gazes out the window, waiting for a callback. Suddenly, he sees the reflection of a very large man. Maybe it's a mountain.
If I hadn't been in my office that night, with my brain cells playing hide and seek with those dizzy flashes down the street, I'd have never got messed up with the stolen jade necklace.
Marlowe turns, and a man-Hulk is right behind him. The man leans over Marlowe and says he wants him to look for somebody. The large man throws some money on the desk as the phone rings from Marlowe's date. Marlowe chooses to follow the money and goes to a place where the dame the Colossus wants to find used to work. The joint is a low-end place named Florian's. The big man says that it has been 8 years since he last saw the woman and 6 years since he heard from her. The whole bar goes quiet when the big man walks in. The new owner says he doesn't know Velma Valento. The big guy scares the rest of the customers. He pitches the manager into some chairs. The giant finally introduces himself as Moose Malloy, Mike Mazurki. Moose takes a couple of bottles and he and Marlowe leave. Moose steals a couple of bottles. Moose tells his story of going away to prison for 8 years and losing touch with Velma. Moose gives more money to Marlowe and says he will be in touch. Marlowe finds out that the owner, Mike Florian, ran the bar until 1938 and died in 1940. Mike's wife, Jessie, Esther Howard, took over the drinking. At least, Marlowe finds her address and goes for a visit. He says she was a middle-aged gal with a face like a bucket of mud. She was a girl that would take a drink if she had to knock the guy down to get at it. Jessie drinks with Marlowe, but says she doesn't know of a woman named Velma. Jessie goes to her room to retrieve a box. Marlowe secretly watches, and he sees Jessie hide a photograph. Marlowe goes into the room and retrieves a hidden picture of Velma. He roughs Jessie up, and she says Velma is dead, and she doesn't know Moose. Marlowe takes his bottle with him when he leaves. From outside, Marlowe sees the now suspiciously sober Jessie calling someone on the telephone. The following morning, Marlowe goes to work, and someone is waiting for him. He thinks it's Moose, but it's a dandy named Lindsay Marriott. Doug Walton. Marlowe catches Lindsay snooping around on his desk. Lindsay says he found Marlowe in the book. On a side note, the person who recommended the PI was a great concern to Harry Angel in Angel Heart 1987 as well. Lindsay says the job is to be a bodyguard while he pays some men some money after midnight. Marlowe is rude, but Lindsay says the job will pay $100. Marlowe finds out that Lindsay is the middleman who is buying back some stolen jewelry for the rightful owner. Marlowe doesn't like the secluded location, and he goes through everything that could go wrong. However, he can't help but take the money for the job. That night, Marlowe and Lindsay drive out to the beach, but he thinks they're being watched. Marlowe goes ahead to scout, and Lindsay hides in the back of the car. Marlowe is scared by a deer, then he goes back to the car. He is knocked unconscious by the strike of a blackjack.
But it's a fine thing. I always follow through on a sale, even if it pays dividends and a broken skull. I didn't see what hit me. I didn't have to.
He wakes later with a flashlight shining in his eyes. A woman asks if he is all right and what happened. When she sees it's Marlowe and not Lindsay, she flees. Marlowe tries to follow, but he's too hurt. He has also been relieved of the money. They left behind his gun, which is probably a Colt Model 1903 pocket hammerless semi-automatic in .32 caliber. Marlowe then finds Lindsay dead in the back seat, having been beaten excessively with a blackjack. He thinks it is an amateur or someone trying to look amateur. Marlowe goes to the police station and reports the murder to Lieutenant Randall. Randall doesn't believe Marlowe's story. Randall tells Marlowe his story is very weak. Randall releases him and tells him to stay away from Jules Amthor and not interfere with the case he is making. Marlowe returns to work in the morning. Waiting for him is Anne Grayle, Anne Shirley, who is using a fake name and posing as a reporter. Anne refers to the jewelry as jade, and Marlowe realizes she is a fake. Anne tries to get information about the case. Marlowe dumps her purse and sees her real name. He asks her if she knows Velma Valento. Marlowe has Anne locked in his office, and he finds out that the jade belongs to her rich and elderly father. However, her father has a new, younger wife. Anne says she is working for herself. Marlowe says he won't turn Anne over to the police if she introduces him to her father and stepmother. Marlowe rides with Anne to the lavish mansion. After a short wait, Marlowe is brought in to meet Lewin Grayle, Miles Mander. Grayle introduces his wife Helen, Claire Trevor, to Marlowe. She looks at Marlowe like he's a dog fart. Marlowe is looking at the blonde Helen and studying her legs when Grayle begins giving the history of jade. Grayle said the missing necklace might be worth $100,000. Grayle leaves and Helen tells that she wore the necklace out dancing and that Lindsay was her date. The money that Lindsay had when he was killed was $8,000.
I've never hired a detective before. What are the rates?
As much as the traffic will bear.
When can you start?
I've already started.
Helen doesn't give out many details of the robbery, but she does say they gave her back one of her rings. Marlowe asks her if she knows Jules Amthor, Otto Kruger. Helen says Amthor is a psychic consultant. Helen is about to kiss Marlowe when Anne opens the door.
Well, this looked like something to rub your palms about. But my client's lovely stepdaughter had another idea.
Helen retains Marlowe to search for the jade. Marlowe asks how to find Amthor, and Helen says she will try and find him. Just then, the butler comes in and announces Amthor. Helen says she hasn't seen him in months. After the two are introduced, Marlowe tells Amthor what the police said about him and then leaves. Anne, who has been listening at the door, runs away. Back at his apartment, Marlowe is sending out his laundry when Helen shows up. Helen gives Marlowe a large retainer. She then wants to take Marlowe out for a drink. Helen and Marlowe go to a swanky joint with an Asian dance show. Helen goes to the bathroom. When Marlowe gets to the booth, Anne is there. Anne says Marlowe is being sent on a wild goose chase and Helen is already gone. She offers to pay him to stay away from her stepmother.
What did she ask you to do?
She wanted me to kiss her and find a jade necklace.
Whatever she was willing to pay you, I'll up it. Just stay away from her. Forget the whole thing.
Marlowe sees Moose walking through the crowd. It's more like the parting of the Red Sea. Moose gives Marlowe the nod to go outside. Moose tells him to ditch Anne. Moose says he's taking Marlowe to meet a guy. Anne is gone, but she has left a message saying that the offer is still open. Moose takes Marlowe to an apartment building. In the service elevator, Moose pulls a gun, and the chauffeur takes Marlowe's gun away. Marlowe is cool, and then Amthor comes in. It looks like he doesn't have a friend in the room. Moose wants to ask Marlowe a question, but Amthor delays him. Amthor questions Marlowe about what the police knew. Marlowe tells Amthor that Lindsay courted the women to be robbed, but someone was pulling the strings on the robbery. Marlowe tells a story about how he might have the necklace and would be willing to sell it. Amthor says he'll buy the jade. Just then, Moose bursts forwards and says Amthor told him that Marlowe had found Velma and was hiding her away. Marlowe and Moose start fighting and the truth is choked out of him. Marlowe smacks Amthor, and for his troubles, he gets knocked out again. This guy needs a CAT scan. Marlowe has a drug-induced falling scene of faces and doors. The dream includes getting injections from Dr. Sonderborg, Ralph Harold.
The first thing I knew, I found myself heaped on a bed like a bag of bones ready for the scrap heap. My throat was dry. My hands felt like a bunch of bananas. I couldn't stand on my pens.
When Marlowe wakes up, he has several days of beard growth. He yells. In a second, an orderly and Moose come into the room. Marlowe is talking crazy, drug-induced stuff. Marlowe has been held for 3 days at Sonderberg's sanatorium, where they were attempting to find out where the jade necklace is located. Marlowe forces himself to stay awake so he can escape. He pulls a thick spring out of the bed frame. He calls for help, and the orderly enters. Marlowe clubs him good.
Okay, I said to myself, you're a tough guy. Let's see you get out of this straitjacket.
Help! Help!
Marlowe makes it to the front door, but he's too high to get out. He goes into Dr. Sonderborg's office. Sonderborg tries to pull a gun, and Marlowe smacks his hand with the spring. Marlowe almost passes out and almost surrenders. He forces Sonderborg to give him the key to the door. On the streets, Marlowe wanders around for a while. Suddenly, Moose shows up and wants Marlowe to start looking for Velma again. Moose knows that Amthor has tricked him about knowing where Velma was. Moose convinces a taxi driver to give Marlowe a ride by ripping the meter box off the mount. Marlowe arrives at Anne's place. He has to force his way in as she is not happy to see him. Marlowe tells her that Helen set him up with Amthor. He suddenly realizes Anne was the girl from the night Lindsay was killed. Anne says she was trying to protect her father. She had found Marlowe's number in Lindsay's pocket. Detective Randall shows up at Anne's door. Marlowe says he would like to help catch Amthor. Marlowe tells the entire story, including about Dr. Sonderborg. They decide not to arrest Marlowe this time. Before Randall leaves, he asks Anne how long it has been since she has been to her father's home in Brentwood. Anne feeds him before they head to her father's house. At the house, Anne finds her father in his office. Grayle has been visited by the police and is loading a revolver. Helen hasn't been around for a few days. The police had asked him about the beach house that Lindsay was renting from Grayle. Grayle is most concerned with losing his wife. Marlowe tells Grayle that he will not go further on the case. Outside, Marlowe tells Anne that they are going to the beach house and he is not stopping his investigation because no one else is stopping. Finally, he tells her he's doing it for her. When they arrive at the beach house, they find that Lieutenant Randall has already searched it. Marlowe smells expensive perfume and he doesn't know how he became connected with the thief. At last, he and Anne kiss. Anne gets mad when she finds out that Marlowe had suspected her. Helen starts laughing and walks into the light. Anne rages at Helen for being a gold digger. Anne leaves to tell her father where Helen is hiding. Marlowe rages on Helen, but she uses her doe eyes on him. Helen gives Marlowe her backstory. She says Amthor is blackmailing her about going out with other men. She says Amthor digs into people's past as a part of their healing therapy. Then he finds something that he can use for blackmail. That is why she had to give the necklace to him during the robbery. Lindsay knew that Amthor was stealing and he double-crossed him. Amthor killed Lindsay and Marlowe was to take the rap. Anne was only around looking out for her father. Marlowe sees Helen turn off a lamp and thinks it's a signal. Helen blurts out that she wants Marlowe to help kill Amthor. Marlowe is shocked, but seems to go along with the plan. Helen throws herself at Marlowe. He tells her to get everything set up. Helen tries to convince Marlowe to stay, but he leaves to go to work. Marlowe goes to Amthor's place, using the servant's entrance he was brought up in before. Amthor's house has been wrecked, and Marlowe finds Amthor dead. He knows Moose killed the man. Marlowe returns to his office and studies Velma's picture. Moose appears right behind him. Moose starts attacking Marlowe, but he stops when he is shown the picture. The woman in the picture is not Velma. Marlowe tells Moose that he has found Velma. Marlowe says he will take Moose to Velma tomorrow night. The next night, Marlowe tells Moose to wait on the beach until he opens the curtains. Inside the beach house, Helen is waiting in the dark. She hands over the necklace to Marlowe and says there was never any holdup. Helen is the one who set up the whole deal. She was supporting Jessie Florian and some others. When Amthor tried to blackmail her, she enlisted Lindsay to help kill Marlowe to make sure Velma was never found because she is Velma. Marlowe accuses Helen/Velma of killing Lindsay. She planned to kill Marlowe, Lindsay, and Amthor. She throws herself at Marlowe again, but he doesn't bite. Velma pulls a gun on Marlowe. Anne and her father have been in the shadows and have heard a lot of the conversation. Grayle tells Helen to go ahead and kill Marlowe. Suddenly, Grayle shoots and kills Helen. Marlowe begins to call the police, but Anne begs him to stop. Moose comes in through the side door. When Moose sees Velma dead on the floor, he goes crazy. Moose starts heading for Grayle. Grayle fires a shot directly in front of Marlowe's face, blinding him. The bullet hits Moose. We return to the interrogation room with Marlowe wearing patches over his eyes. Lieutenant Randall returns with Marlowe's gun and detective badge. Randall says that Moose made it to Grayle and that the third shot killed Grayle. Marlowe asks if Anne was okay and if she had spoken to the police in support of him. He then asks if she is in the room, and Anne shakes her head not to let Marlowe know she is there. Marlowe talks about Anne as she follows behind, listening. The cops put Marlowe in a cab, and Anne gets in with him. He smells her perfume and knows it's her. He makes a joke and kisses Anne. Conclusion. As mentioned in the quote, an earlier film was based on the book Farewell My Lovely, titled The Falcon Takes Over 1942. There's also a later version titled Farewell My Lovely 1975. Although this later film featured Robert Mitchum, it is not as good as it could be. Some of the homosexuality and drugs were toned down in this film to avoid problems with the Haze Code. Most of Esther Howard's bar scenes were cut from the script because it was originally an African-American club which they didn't think would play down south. This movie was shot in 44 days under Edward Dmytryk's direction, and they used some pretty nifty tricks. When Moose first arrived at Marlowe's office, his face was reflected in the glass. To make the face seem large enough, they inserted a piece of glass in the middle of the room closer to Marlowe and photographed Moose's image on the glass. Moose was made to look more intimidating and larger by Dmytryk, having the sets built with slanting roofs, making the actor seem larger as he got closer. Mazurki at 6'4.5" was only slightly taller than the 6'2" Powell. For many scenes, Powell had to stand in the trench. Dmytryk had the camera pull back from Powell's face for the drug-induced falling, and he accelerated it as it got further away. This technique obtained the desired result of falling into a drug haze. Near the end of the film, when Marlowe dives for Grayle's gun, they had to protect actor Powell from the gun blast. The crew again used a piece of glass and had the actor fire into the glass. The actor had to hold the gun in his left hand to be reflected in his right hand. World famous short summary: dames are soft, but bullets are hard. All right, if you enjoy the show and want more, please give me a like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the show get found. If you want to go further with your support, use one of the affiliate links in the description, and the show will receive a small commission. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. There's a lot of information on the site, especially about film noir. Beware the Moors. In a couple of seconds, some boxes are going to pop up here. One's a film review of another film noir that I recommend you watch. The other is a playlist of similar films.